Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. And so Nigel Farage has been at it again, engaging in a bit of post-general election gloating. The general election where he failed to win a single seat, where he himself was too scared to actually stand, and where he actually reduced the size of the now pro-Brexit Conservative Party's majority by standing against them in, well, about half the seats they were contesting. But before he goes off to America to join the highly lucrative speech circuit, he's decided to get some excuses in early ahead of the realities of Brexit hitting home, just in case he ever has to come back to the UK. But first, if you'd like to see more of my videos, then please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, remember a few years ago when the Brexit mantra was all about, we hold all the cards, we can make it on our own, we can be stronger on our own, we can make our own deals, we can forge our own path, we can do our own thing, follow our own rules, all the rest of it. Obviously, it was particularly easy for Nigel Farage to tell as many outrageous lies as he wanted because he had deliberately shied away from holding any public office that would have given him power, but with it accountability. So let's be honest, he is a very charismatic chap, and he's extremely good at hoodwinking people. He absolutely could have done well in the Conservative Party and would no doubt be a senior minister by now if that's what he'd wanted. But perhaps he knew that with power, as I say, eventually comes accountability, or maybe he just underestimated how easy it is to escape that accountability if you just keep lying. Either way, he had an easy task. Tell the most ridiculous lies, and when they fall flat, blame it on the incompetence of those who do hold the power. In this vein, he has blamed the Conservative Party for the mess that Brexit has caused so far, even though he's also taking credit for their general election win. But just as he fled the country after the 2016 referendum, in order to avoid any blame at all for the mess that all informed observers knew was coming, so he's about to adopt another disappearing act across the Atlantic for the mess that he knows will be coming in the next year or two. But just before leaving, he said, and I quote, "I think for the first time we've potentially got the upper hand in these negotiations." Now, absolutely ludicrous, of course, but you can see why he's saying it. That aspect of what he's saying makes sense. He's claiming that the Conservatives made a mess of Brexit, then he came back, sorted it all out with his Brexit party, and has once again left the Conservative government in a strong position to make the best of Brexit. He'll leave again, and when it all goes tits up, he can come and say that he left them with a golden opportunity, and how did you manage to make a mess of that? You've completely squandered it. What are you doing? And if an almighty mess is not made of Brexit, let's be charitable for a moment, then he still gets to keep saying that he set us on the path. So it's win-win for him. There is literally no outcome with that statement that can reflect poorly upon him, because he's never been in an accountable position in the process, so any mess will never be his fault. His supporters will continue to believe in his wisdom, come what may. But he's also gone on to say a few things which are rather strange. He talked about compromises being needed. Even though he promised complete power for the UK after Brexit, he does seem to be reining that one in a little. He's now saying that of course we're going to have to compromise. Of course we're not going to get everything we want. Before that he was saying we could do anything we like. That's the whole point, isn't it? They keep saying we don't want to be in the EU because we want to make our own rules. Now he's saying, well, of course we're going to have to follow other people's rule. You've got to compromise in order to, get deals with other people. And it's an odd statement for someone who could absolutely keep saying that we're in the strongest position and can demand whatever we want. And then he gets to blame it on the government when that doesn't happen. It is a bit perplexing for me, because he could absolutely do that. The sort of people who believe it will carry on believing it. And he also said something else which is mind-blowing, I thought. He said that Boris Johnson should still be prepared to walk away without any deal at all. Now, I know this has been the Brexiteer narrative for the past few years. They somehow convince people that it is a credible bargaining position, but they also had the safety net of knowing that the government, and indeed Parliament at the time, would never drop out of the EU without a deal. Absolute madness. They wouldn't be that reckless. So they knew that their nonsense would never be called out. But now we have a government and a parliament that looks like it is prepared to leave the EU without a deal at the end of 2020. And in actual fact, they seem to favour that ploy. There's good reason to suppose that Boris Johnson is going to do just this. It's the only way you can get his precious US trade deal, with or without Donald Trump. It doesn't make any difference who wins the presidential election. In fact, it's the only way for him to get any trade deal at all before those who voted for Brexit die of old age and Johnson is left with a nation of very angry, very unemployed pro-EU citizens. So why would Nigel Farage give his seal of approval to a tactic that not only may well be tried out, but very likely will and would devastate the lives of millions in the UK? And this isn't one where, like with negotiations, with a deal, he can always say, oh, you didn't get the best deal. Like if we end up, let's say we end up with some scabby deal and everyone actually sees it for something that is actually worse than membership, he can always say, well, you were bad at negotiating. You should have got a better deal. Because anyone can say that. You should have done better. Whereas walking away, because we don't get the deal we want, walking away and leaving with no deal, which Nigel Farage says is fine, we can cope with. That's not something where when it all goes to hell, he can say, well, you did it wrong. You can't walk away without a deal in a wrong way. It's not an action. It's an inaction. It's a failure to do something. There's no two ways of walking away without a deal. It's just what it says. And I was just thinking, why didn't he just carry on saying, I have set you on the right path. Now I'm going to go away. I'm sure you can take it from here. And then if they did, claim the credit. And if they didn't, say, how did you make a mess of that? And that's all he had to do. And it's perhaps a reminder that although Nigel Farage is a very effective rabble-rouser, he's been a key figure in the Brexit narrative, of course, he's not at all politically savvy. He's managed his success. He's basically a chancer. He has managed his success by hitting the nerves of prejudice with meaningless slogans that resonated as long as you didn't actually think about them. But when he actually has something to say, he flounders. But given that his supporters don't apply any real thought or memory to what he says, they're quite happy to completely forget what he says and allow him to say the opposite as if it's what he's always said. I'm sure that if he does see a no-deal Brexit wasteland on his return, he'll just say that Johnson cocked it up and how much better he'd have done, even though he turns down the chance at power at every opportunity. And this is the reality we're faced with. This man, who is a complete political chancer, and he talks as if he has masterminded anything. The Conservative Party have absolutely adopted their position by chasing the Brexit Party. The Brexit Party have absolutely steered the Conservative Party. It's not Nigel Farage's, strategy that has done it. He's just the front guy. He's just the guy who goes out on stage and goes Brexit and breaking point and all the other slogans that mean nothing, that weren't necessarily even written by himself, but he comes across. And he's now going to go on a speech circuit talking about how brilliant he was and getting paid an absolute fortune for it. And then in the second half of the year, he's going to go around doing speeches for Donald Trump, again, being paid a fortune. In the next year, he could well earn enough to give even himself a comfortable retirement. It doesn't matter anymore that he's not going to get an MP's salary, although he will still get the pension. And we'll have to pay for that. I resent that. But there we are. That's the last we'll see of Nigel Farage for a little while. For a little while, he'll do what he did before, do his disappearing act, wait for the dust to settle if it ever does. I wouldn't expect him to be back for a couple of years until he can say that, oh, what a mess you've made of it. But I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, then please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.